Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're exploring a truly fascinating, maybe slightly baffling corner of our culture. You know, when you think about it, we live in a world that's just overflowing with amazing media, critically acclaimed films, books people adore, award-winning performances, and yet it's striking, isn't it, how often we find ourselves drawn to stuff that's, well, let's be honest, undeniably bad. It's this captivating paradox. Why do millions, literally millions, flock to watch, to mock, and sometimes even to, celebrate movies like The Room, or remember Cats from 2019?
Oh boy, Cats.
Exactly. Or even internet legends like that infamous fanfiction, My Immortal. What is this strange, almost magnetic pull of content that's so awful, it somehow flips around and becomes good? Or at least compelling. So our mission today, for you listening, is to unpack this whole cultural obsession with what gets called trash content. We're going to dig into its history, which is surprisingly long, explore the psychology behind why we're drawn to it, and connect it all to what's happening right now. By the end of this deep dive, you're going to have a kind of shortcut to understanding this weird phenomenon. Hopefully with some surprising facts, maybe a few aha moments about why we humans do the things we do. Okay, let's unpack this.
What's fascinating here, I think, is that it really goes beyond just simple ridicule or, killing time with something mindless. This whole thing, it gives us a window into something much deeper. It shows us how audiences actually engage with media, how they repurpose it, sometimes completely twisting its original meaning or intent. It's about understanding this really unique form of cultural consumption. It's not just about appreciating good art. It's about how we collectively build meaning, even out of things that seem like total failures.
That's a really crucial distinction you're making, because it's easy to just write this off as, oh, it's just a silly internet thing, right? But you're saying this obsession, it actually has roots going way back. Decades, even.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a much longer story than most people assume. If you actually trace it back, the timeline of infamous media, let's call it, is surprisingly rich. It's filled with these key moments that show it wasn't an overnight sensation at all. I mean, one of the earliest sort of pioneers of this kind of infamy has got to be Ed Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space. Came out way back in 1959.
Right, the classic worst movie ever made.
Exactly. It often gets that title almost affectionately, and well, for good reason.
Oh, yeah.
It earned that reputation mostly because it's just unintentionally hilarious. The super low budget is visible in every single frame. You've got rubber octopi, flying saucers dangling on visible strings. The special effects were, charmingly terrible.
Yeah, charmingly is a good word for it.
And the plot was spectacularly incoherent. I mean, it jumps between vampires, aliens, a zombie uprising.
Yeah.
There's no logical thread. It just broke every expectation of what a movie should be. You've got continuity errors everywhere, gravestones wobbling, actors clearly forgetting lines. But, and this is key, it didn't actually harm the viewer. It was just baffling. This sort of benign violation, which we'll probably get into more later, is really central to why people still watch it.
So it was weird, but safe weird.
Precisely. Then, fast forward a bit to the 1980s. The rise of VHS tapes, that whole home video boom, and also late-night cable TV, that really opened up a new era for these kinds of films.
Ah, the VHS era. Good times.
Yeah. Before that, if you missed a bad movie in its 1 week theatrical run, it was just gone forever. But now, people could record stuff off TV, rent tapes, rewind, rewatch. This allowed these niche, often pretty bad horror and sci-fi films to find a real cult following, completely outside the mainstream critics who probably hated them.
Like those late-night creature features.
Exactly, those things that aired at 2 a.m. They weren't getting 5-star reviews, but they found their audience. People could watch them over and over, share them with friends at sleepovers, And crucially, they could discover the hidden, unintentional humor together. Being able to pause and point out, look at that terrible monster suit, or did he really just say that? That amplified the shared fun of it all.
Okay, so access changed things. It went from stumbling on something weird to being able to actively seek it out and share it. But even before the internet really took hold, how did some of these films become actual legends? That must have taken more than just VHS tapes.
It absolutely did. A fantastic example of a pre-internet viral sensation way before we even had the word meme is Troll 2. Came out in 1990.
Troll 2, which famously has no trolls in it.
Not a single troll.
Yeah.
And zero connection to the first Troll movie. The backstory is just amazing. The director, Claudio Fagasso, was Italian and reportedly barely spoke any English. And the actors, mostly amateurs found locally in Utah, were apparently forbidden from improvising or changing the script, which was just nonsensical, written phonetically by someone who didn't speak English well.
Oh, wow. So the weird dialogue was intentional, in a way.
Not intentionally bad, but intentionally as written. This meant you got lines like, "Oh my God," delivered with this completely bewildered but totally earnest conviction. Or the classic, "They're eating her, and then they're gonna eat me, oh my God." Those became iconic because they were delivered so seriously, despite being utterly absurd. It really shows the accidental nature of some of this stuff. It wasn't trying to be terrible. The circumstances just conspired to make it that way. And that genuine, unvarnished failure is what made it so compelling. It even led to that great documentary, Best Worst Movie, made years later by the guy who was the child star in it.
That's amazing. What else from that pre-internet era stands out as legendary bad?
Well, a bit earlier, 1978, you absolutely have to mention the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh, the forbidden fruit of Star Wars lore.
Totally. It was this bizarre one-off TV special aired between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Had the original cast, Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, but also B. Arthur singing in the cantina, Jefferson Starship doing a number.
B. Arthur. Seriously. And Harvey Korman in multiple roles, plus this whole weird plot about Chewbacca's family celebrating Life Day on Kashyyyk. The tone was just all over the place. Variety show meets sci-fi. George Lucas himself apparently hated it so much that he tried to basically erase it from existence. Famously said he wished he could track down every copy and smash it with a hammer.
Wow, when the creator wants to destroy it.
Right. That reaction from Lucas, his attempt to bury it, only made its badness more legendary. It cemented its place in cult infamy. It became this whispered about thing, passed around on grainy bootleg VHS tapes for decades. What's really insightful there is how sometimes the creator's rejection of their own work can be the very thing that fuels its cult status. It turns a simple flop into actual folklore.
Okay, so we have these early examples, things spreading by word of mouth and bootleg takes.
Yeah.
But then it feels like there was a real shift, a moment where it became less about accidental discovery and more about seeking it out specifically to mock it, communally.
You're thinking of The Room.
I am absolutely thinking of The Room.
Yeah.
2003, that feels like the turning point. You're spot on. The Room is arguably the most pivotal moment in the modern history of so bad it's good cinema. It really marked a clear shift. Before, enjoying a bad movie might have been, a private giggle with friends or something you stumbled upon. With The Room, which Tommy Wiseau wrote, directed, produced, and starred in, pouring millions of his own mysterious money into it, watching it became an explicitly ironic, communal event.
Yeah, the midnight screenings became legendary.
Totally. People started going to screenings specifically to participate in the mockery. It wasn't just passive viewing. It became interactive theater. Audiences yelling iconic lines back at the screen, "You're tearing me apart, Lisa," throwing plastic spoons whenever those framed pictures of spoons inexplicably appeared in the background.
The spoons. I always wondered about the spoons.
Nobody really knows why the spoons are there, which is part of the fun.
Yeah.
But audiences embraced every bizarre plot turn, every stilted line delivery, every nonsensical character motivation. It became a shared ritual. It wasn't just about watching a bad movie anymore. It was about participating in its badness as a collective. That active, almost celebratory engagement is what made The Room explode into the phenomenon it is today.
And then you get into the 2010s, and it feels like this whole thing just went supernova. It moved beyond just those niche midnight screenings.
Yeah, the internet really threw gasoline on the fire. Platforms like YouTube, the rise of podcasts, they created the perfect echo chamber and also a platform for this kind of humorous media deconstruction.
Think of it like the internet finally giving a microphone to everyone who ever whispered, "This is so bad," during a movie.
That's a perfect analogy. It really empowered individuals to become critics and comedians in their own right, sharing their takes with potentially millions.
Yeah.
And we saw this rapid growth of like a whole dedicated industry around dissecting bad media. It went from a quirky hobby to a viable career path for a lot of creators.
Yeah, you have shows like, "How Did This Get Made?"
Exactly, that podcast where comedians just lovingly tear apart famously bad films, or YouTube channels like Red Letter Media, known for their really long, brutally honest, and often hilarious reviews. Remember the Star Wars prequel review.
Oh, the Plinkett reviews. Legendary.
Legendary. And then you have creators like Jenny Nicholson, who does these incredibly detailed, super witty video essays on everything from terrible movies to weird theme park lore. Or someone like Internet Historian, who chronicles these bizarre internet culture fails with such meticulous, dry humor.
You're gonna find the weirdest corners of the internet.
They do. And these creators attracted massive audiences who just loved hearing someone else articulate why something was so bad, often in a really funny way. They pulled apart everything, the plot, the acting, the effects. These platforms just amplify the whole phenomenon, taking it from a niche cult interest to something much more mainstream. They really legitimize the act of ironic consumption.
And it feels like during that time, irony itself just became bigger. Like meta humor was everywhere.
Absolutely. There was definitely a significant cultural shift towards irony and meta humor becoming dominant forms of expression, especially online and among younger audiences. And this led to a really fascinating kind of paradoxical development, the rise of intentionally bad media.
Right where they're trying to be bad.
Exactly. Studios and creators started realizing, hey, there's actually a market for films that are designed to be so bad they're good. It started blurring the line between genuine artistic failure and, frankly, profitable absurdity. Companies like The Asylum basically perfected this model. They churn out these mockbusters, like Transmorphers instead of Transformers, or Atlantic Rim instead of Pacific Rim.
Sharknado.
Sharknado is the prime example. Or more recently, things like Velocipaster, a priest who turns into a dinosaur. They embrace their ridiculous premises. They often have intentionally cheesy effects, ludicrous plots, maybe even a knowing wink to the audience. The cheap production values and outlandish stories become the selling point. And this is where it gets really interesting for you, the listener, because it forces you to ask, if something is meant to be bad, can it still be bad in that same captivating, accidental way?
Yeah, does calculated badness hit the same as earnest failure? It feels different somehow.
It does. It changes our relationship with it. Is it still fun? Often, yes. But is it the same kind of fascinating failure as Plan 9 or The Room? Probably not.
So, okay, we've gone from accidental failures finding cults to intentional absurdity becoming a business model. Which brings us back to the big question. What does this all mean? Why are we as humans so drawn to this stuff? There must be something deeper going on psychologically.
Oh, definitely. It's not just random. There are some pretty compelling psychological and sociological theories that help explain this enduring appeal. One of the most useful frameworks is something called the benign violation theory, developed by psychologists Peter McGraw and Caleb Warren around 2010.
Benign violation. Okay, break that down.
So the basic idea is that humor often happens when something violates our expectations of how things should be, like a norm or a rule. But crucially, the violation is also seen as harmless or benign.
Like a practical joke.
Exactly, or a pun. A pun violates linguistic rules, but it doesn't hurt anyone. So apply that to bad media. When a film has terrible acting or nonsensical plot holes or effects that look like they were made in someone's garage.
It violates our expectations of competent filmmaking.
Precisely. It's a clear deviation from cinematic norms, from what we consider good, or even just baseline competent. And here's the key, because this violation isn't personally harmful.
It's not going to ruin your day or cost you money.
Right, it's not threatening your safety or well-being. Because it's benign, our minds seem to resolve this weird incongruity, this violation, by finding it amusing. We laugh because the situation is just so off-kilter, unexpected, and absurd, but ultimately safe. So you could think of bad media as a kind of safe transgression for our brains. It lets us play with chaos and incompetence without any real risk. It's like a mental playground for spotting flaws.
That makes a lot of sense. It's funny because it's wrong, but not dangerously wrong. What else is going on in our heads?
Well, there's also the simple, maybe slightly less noble pleasure of schadenfreude.
Ah, yes, the German word for finding joy in someone else's misfortune.
Pretty much. When we watch a film or a show that's truly terrible, especially if it seems like it had serious intentions, maybe a big budget, maybe big stars, we're essentially witnessing a public failure unfold. And there can be a certain satisfaction, maybe even a little bit of glee, in watching that kind of unintentional artistic misstep, especially when it's on a grand scale and, it just doesn't reflect badly on us.
Right, it makes us feel a bit smarter, maybe. Like, wow, I could see that mistake a mile off.
Exactly. It's that moment where we can feel slightly superior, even if just briefly, to this perceived artistic failure playing out on screen. It's a pretty common human tendency, feeling a little better about ourselves when observing others stumble.
Okay, so there's the benign violation, there's schadenfreude, and I imagine there's also something about trying to make sense of it. Like if something is so bad but everyone is talking about it, that creates a weird tension in your brain, right?
You've absolutely hit on another key psychological phenomenon: cognitive dissonance.
Right, that feeling when you hold two conflicting ideas at once.
Exactly. It's that mental discomfort you feel when your beliefs or attitudes clash. Like, you believe smoking is bad for you, but you smoke anyway. That's dissonance. So in the context of bad media, think about it. Something is objectively terrible. Artistically, technically, maybe morally, just bad. yet somehow it becomes incredibly popular or generates massive discussion.
This movie is awful versus everyone is watching and talking about this awful movie.
Right. Those two ideas clash. Our minds don't like that contradiction, that dissonance, so we're compelled to resolve it somehow. And often the easiest and maybe the most enjoyable way to resolve that tension is by reframing our experience.
Yeah.
We start laughing at it, we embrace the absurdity, we find this communal enjoyment in its very awfulness.
So laughing at it helps resolve the conflict.
It does. It allows us to process the conflicting information, bad yet popular, in a way that provides a sense of coherence and even pleasure. We essentially force the enjoyment or find a new kind of enjoyment to make the popularity make sense, even if the content itself remains objectively terrible.
That's fascinating. So our brains are actively working to find the fun in the failure.
In a way, yes. But it's not just happening inside our individual heads. The sociological side of this is just as important, maybe even more so.
You mean how we watch this stuff together?
Exactly. Consuming bad media, especially bad movies, very often becomes a shared ritual. It's a collective event, not just something you do alone in the dark. Think about those midnight screenings of The Room or Rocky Horror. People gather specifically to experience it together, to react together, yelling lines, throwing props. They create a unique subculture around the film.
It's like a party centered around a terrible movie.
It really is. Or look at how people engage online now. You've got live tweeting sessions during a notoriously bad show, huge Reddit threads dissecting every flaw, endless reaction videos on YouTube. People aren't just watching the content, they're watching and engaging with each other's reactions to it, often in real time. This builds a really powerful sense of belonging and community. You're all in on the same joke.
Yeah, you feel connected to strangers through shared mockery.
Right. And that shared amusement, that validation, oh, you thought that was ridiculous too. It's a strong bonding agent. This also connects to something called parasocial bonding, especially with those online creators we mentioned earlier, the ones who dissect bad content.
Parasocial meaning like a one-sided relationship.
Exactly. You feel like you know them, but they don't know you. People who watch, say, Jenny Nicholson or Drew Gooden or Scott the Woz regularly, they don't just see them as critics, they become almost like trusted friends or guides for this shared ironic enjoyment.
Like you're watching the bad movie with them.
Precisely. You feel like they're articulating your own thoughts, validating your reactions. It creates a bond, even though it's one-sided. These creators become focal points for these communities of like-minded ironic consumers. So if you step back and look at the bigger picture, it really reinforces that this isn't just about the movie or the show itself. It's tapping into this deep human need we have for connection, for shared experience, for finding common ground through humor, even if that humor comes from something fundamentally flawed. It's about how we use art, even failed art, as a tool to connect with each other.
That's such a great point about connection. And this community aspect, it feels like it's only gotten stronger, maybe even weirder, in the modern digital age. Now, terrible media isn't just ridiculed. Sometimes it feels like it's actually rewarded. It gets this bizarre, ironic fame.
Oh, absolutely. Social media virality has become this incredible, unpredictable engine. You can take what might have been just a quiet box office bomb and transform it into, like you said, pure pop culture gold.
A prime example has to be Morbius, right?
Morbius is the perfect case study. The film came out, got pretty bad reviews, didn't make much money, seemed destined to be forgotten. But then the internet just latched onto it with this wave of completely ironic memes. You know, it's Morbin time. Became a huge catchphrase. People joked relentlessly about it being the highest grossing, most acclaimed movie ever made.
Even though everyone knew it wasn't.
Exactly. The irony was the whole point. But the sheer volume and absurdity of these memes online were so massive, so pervasive, that it actually seemed to convince Sony, the studio, that there was real demand. They re-released the movie in theaters.
Which is just wild. Did it work?
No. That's the kicker. The re-release flopped again, maybe even harder. What the Morbius saga really shows us isn't just that memes are powerful, it's that social media can create this phantom demand. It can trick even major corporations into mistaking ironic buzz for genuine interest. It demonstrates both the huge power of viral fame to generate attention, but also its limits. You can get people talking, you can even get a re-release, but you can't necessarily translate that ironic chatter into actual ticket sales or genuine appreciation if the thing itself, well, still isn't very good.
So the meme outlived and maybe even overshadowed the movie itself.
Completely.
Yeah.
And this feeds directly into what we call the content commentary loop. It's this self-perpetuating cycle, especially visible on platforms like YouTube and TikTok. It goes like this. A piece of bad media comes out. Creators review it, dissect it, make fun of it. Their fans watch these reviews, share them, comment on them. Then, those creators or other creators might make content about the fan reactions or about the memes that sprung up around the original bad media. You get reaction videos to reaction videos, video essays analyzing the memes, TikToks reenacting terrible dialogue.
It just keeps feeding itself.
Exactly. It creates this endless feedback loop. The original bad thing is just the starting point, the nucleus for this huge, ever-expanding universe of secondary content, commentary, memes, fan theories, inside jokes. Bad content now has this incredible afterlife. It doesn't just disappear. It spawns its own lore, its own ironic fandoms. Its cultural impact stretches way beyond its initial release, often completely overshadowing whatever the creators originally intended. The original text just becomes raw material for everyone else to play with.
It's like the media is composting itself and growing new, weirder things. Are there other big recent examples that really rode this wave of ironic fame? It feels like every year gives us a new contender for the so bad it's good crown.
Oh, for sure. Cats, the 2019 movie adaptation of the musical, is a huge one. The reaction to that was immediate and intense.
The digital fur technology.
Yeah, infamous digital fur technology. It caused such widespread confusion, bordering on cultural trauma for some viewers. The CGI rendering of the cat-human hybrids was just so uncanny, so unsettling for many people, that the film almost instantly achieved so bad it's good status, maybe even so bad it's terrifying.
People went to see it because it looks so weird.
Exactly. They weren't necessarily going for the songs or the story. They were going to experience the sheer oddity of it, to share in that collective bewilderment, and maybe just to marvel at the bizarre design choices. It sparked endless memes, countless critical dissections, and became this unavoidable cultural touchstone of unintentional digital horror.
And more recently, what about that Karen movie?
Right, Karen. The movie from 2021. That one gained traction online, not just for being, maybe low budget or having some rough acting.
It was the plot, wasn't it?
It was the incredibly on-the-nose, almost cartoonish plot about a racist white woman named Karen who terrorizes her new black neighbors. Its attempts at social commentary were seen by many as so heavy-handed and lacking nuance that they veered into unintentional self-parody. So it went viral, sparking this huge wave of ironic consumption and online debate. It became this weird lightning rod showing how contemporary social issues, very real and serious ones, can get tangled up in this ironic consumption cycle. A film's awkwardness, its clumsy execution, especially when dealing with sensitive topics, can itself become the source of its fascination, making it a focal point for cultural commentary, memes, and arguments about representation, even if the film itself wasn't very good.
These examples really hammer home how powerful the internet is in creating and sustaining these cult followings. But, listening to all this, it does lead to some more complicated questions, doesn't it? Is it always just harmless fun when we're obsessing over bad media? Are there downsides we should be thinking about?
That's a really crucial point, and it's something that gets debated quite a bit. What are the main areas of concern? Is ethical? Is it actually okay to mock the creators of failed art? I mean, it's one thing to laugh at a huge Hollywood blockbuster that cost $200 million and had famous stars attached. Maybe they can take it. What about smaller independent creators?
Yeah, people who poured their life savings into a passion project.
Exactly. Some creators were genuinely sincere. Maybe they were underfunded, working with limited resources. Maybe they were marginalized voices trying to tell their story and just didn't quite pull it off. Their failures could be deeply personal, really poignant. So it raises this important question for you, the listener. Where do you draw the line? When does playful mockery become genuinely cruel ridicule? Does the creator's intention matter? Do their resources matter? It forces us to think about empathy, about the human beings behind the art, even when the art doesn't quite land.
That's a tough line to navigate. And is all bad content really accidental? Or are some people playing the game now?
That's the other big wrinkle. There's this kind of myth that all classic bad movies were these pure, unintentional failures born of, like, ambition, wildly exceeding ability. And while many were, like Plan 9, the truth is, some bad media today is strategically bad. We touched on this with companies like The Asylum. They built their entire business model around creating films designed to be cheesy, low budget, and derivative. They're mockbusters, Snakes on a Train, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely do. Their goal isn't to win Oscars or get great reviews. Their goal is to generate viral infamy, to get people talking and laughing at their films, because that attention translates directly into views on streaming services or DVD sales. So the badness becomes a calculated marketing strategy. It blurs the lines significantly. What was once maybe a happy accident of incompetence becomes a deliberate commercial product, specifically engineered to exploit the very phenomenon we're discussing.
So they're intentionally making bad art to cash in on our love of bad art. That feels meta. But what about the creators of the original accidental failures? Does all this mockery just ruin their lives, or is there sometimes an upside for them? Being famous for failure seems like a mixed blessing.
It does seem that way, but surprisingly often, there's a significant silver lining, almost like a weird redemption arc through infamy. For many creators of genuinely bad but now cult classic media, their ironic popularity leads to a level of fame, and sometimes even second careers, they likely never would have achieved through conventional success.
Like Tommy Wiseau.
Tommy Wiseau is the absolute poster child for this. The Room was, by all accounts, a critical and commercial disaster when it first came out. He reportedly couldn't even give tickets away. But its subsequent explosion into a cult phenomenon has made him this enigmatic, internationally recognized figure. He now actively tours with the film, does Q&As, interacts with fans who treat him like a rock star.
And sells merchandise.
Oh yeah, t-shirts, keychains, talking bobbleheads. The Room merchandise is a whole industry. His failure essentially became his brand. It gave him this sustained career, a bizarre kind of artistic immortality, a passionate global fan base, and even indirectly led to an Oscar-nominated Hollywood movie being made about his failure, the disaster artist.
That's incredible. His worst work made him famous.
Exactly. It shows how a perceived artistic catastrophe can be unexpectedly transformative for the creator. It kind of proves that old adage, sometimes bad publicity really can be good publicity, or at least interesting publicity.
It's just amazing how something can fail so hard and yet ripple outwards in so many unexpected ways. And this isn't just us talking about weird movies. You mentioned earlier that scholars and theorists have actually studied this, right? Giving it some serious thought.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't just a quirky pop culture trend. It's a phenomenon that academics, particularly in cultural studies, film theory, and sociology, have been examining for decades. They've developed frameworks to help us understand why we appreciate bad stuff. One of the absolute foundational texts you have to mention is Susan Sontag's incredibly influential 1964 essay, Notes on Camp.
Camp. That word gets thrown around a lot. What did Sontag mean by it?
Sontag described camp not just as bad taste, but as a specific sensibility and aesthetic. It's a love of exaggeration, of artifice, of things being off. It particularly finds value in things that are trying very hard to be serious but fail spectacularly, becoming unintentionally funny. She famously said camp sees things in quotation marks like a statue rather than a statue, and she articulated that core idea. It's good because it's awful. It's about enjoying art precisely because it's too much, because it's exaggerated, because its seriousness collapses under its own weight. Think over-the-top melodrama, outrageous costumes, failed grandeur.
That's camp.
So it's finding pleasure in the failure of seriousness.
In many ways, yes. It's an embrace of style over content, often, and a delight in theatricality and extremity, where the value isn't in perfection, but in the audacious, sometimes hilarious, imperfection.
Okay, so Sontag gives us camp. What other academic ideas help here?
Well, someone like Noel Carroll, a philosopher of art, has written extensively about horror and comedy. He argues that these two genres, which often overlap with bad media, share deep roots in the concept of transgression. Transgression meaning breaking rules.
Exactly. Both horror and comedy play with what's forbidden, what's unexpected, what violates norms. Horror violates our sense of safety, order, the natural world. Comedy often violates social conventions, logic, politeness. Carroll suggests that bad media, often because of its sheer incompetence or bizarre logic, frequently stumbles unintentionally into both kinds of transgression at once. It can be kind of horrific in its ineptitude, but also hilarious in its absurdity.
Like you're shocked it's so bad, but also laughing.
Right. The violation of basic cinematic rules of storytelling logic elicits this complex reaction that mixes shock, disbelief, and amusement. Then you have someone like Henry Jenkins, a media scholar, who talks about textual poaching.
Textual poaching. It sounds like stealing.
Kind of, but in a creative way. Jenkins's idea is that audiences aren't just passive sponges soaking up media. They actively poach from texts, meaning movies, books, shows, games, whatever, taking elements they like or dislike and repurposing them to create their own meanings, their own stories, their own humor. So in the context of bad media, textual poaching is exactly what fans of The Room are doing when they throw spoons or yell lines. They're taking the raw material of this flawed film, its weird dialogue, its continuity errors, its strange plot points, and transforming it through memes, fan fiction, commentary videos, live rituals.
They're making it their own.
Precisely. They turn passive consumption into this active, creative participation.
Right.
They're making new meaning where the original creator probably didn't intend any or intended something completely different. The bad media becomes a catalyst for the audience's own cultural production.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. We're not just laughing at it, we're actively doing something with it, reshaping it. But surely not all academics see this as positive. Is there a counter-argument?
Oh, definitely. While many scholars analyze and even celebrate this phenomenon, others offer a more critical perspective. Some argue that this trend, especially the heavy reliance on irony when consuming and talking about bad media, might actually foster a kind of cynical culture.
Cynical how?
Their concern is that if we're constantly approaching media with this ironic detachment, always looking for the flaws, always ready to mock, it might create an emotional shield. It could protect us from feeling genuine vulnerability or engaging with sincere emotion in art.
Like if everything's a joke, nothing really matters.
That's the worry.
Yeah.
If we get too comfortable laughing at things, we might lose our capacity to engage deeply with art that is genuinely heartfelt, complex, or challenging on its own terms. It's a balancing act. So this alternative view prompts us to consider, does our constant search for ironic amusement maybe, inadvertently, dull our appreciation for true quality, for emotional depth, for sincere artistic effort? It's a fair question. Are we becoming too jaded by bathing in irony?
That's definitely food for thought. Okay, to really ground all these ideas, let's revisit some of those key case studies we mentioned, maybe dig into a few more specifics about their impact and why they resonate so much.
Sounds good. The Room, 2003, we have to keep coming back to it because it's just such a cornerstone. The alleged $6 million budget, the mystery surrounding where Tommy Wiseau got the money, it all adds to the legend. Its baffling incompetence, the plot lines that just appear and disappear, like the drug dealer subplot or Lisa's mother's cancer diagnosis, the bizarre dialogue, the infamous rooftop scenes where characters just wander in and out saying, "Oh, hi." It's all become iconic. And the fact that it inspired The Disaster Artist, a mainstream Oscar-nominated Hollywood film starring James Franco, really solidifies its incredible, almost unbelievable cultural footprint. The Room isn't just a movie anymore, it's a global participatory event with these established fan rituals like the spoon throwing or yelling, "Anyway, how's your sex life?" It's communal catharsis through shared absurdity.
It transcended film to become performance art.
Almost, yeah. Then, switching gears completely, you have internet-native examples like the fanfiction My Immortal. This popped up on fanfiction.net in the mid-2000s. It's a gothic Harry Potter fanfic, focusing on a non-canon vampire character, often called Ebony Darkness Dementia Raven Way.
Just the name tells you something's up.
Right. It became legendary online purely for its spectacular chaos. The spelling and grammar were atrocious. The characterizations were wildly inconsistent with the Harry Potter books. The plot made absolutely no sense, full of improbable angst and hot topic aesthetics. The mystery surrounding who actually wrote it, was it a troll? Was it genuine? Has persisted for years. It sparked actual academic interest in internet folklore, online identity, and digital authorship. And it's generated countless dramatic readings on YouTube and podcasts where people perform its glorious awfulness. Its sheer, unadulterated messiness made it a touchstone for ironic enjoyment online, showing how collective internet engagement can elevate even the most profoundly flawed writing to legendary status.
From Hollywood budgets to fan fiction archives, the badness is everywhere. What about video games? Any legendary disasters there?
Oh, the absolute classic has to be E.T. the Extraterrestrial for the Atari 2600, released in 1982. This game is infamous. It's often cited as being so disastrously bad and such a commercial failure that it was a major contributing factor to the big video game industry crash of 1983.
Wow, it helped crash an entire industry.
It certainly didn't help. The game was developed incredibly quickly, rushed out for the Christmas season in about 6 weeks. And it was notoriously cryptic, frustrating, and buggy. Players spent most of their time falling into these inescapable pits on the screen.
Sounds fun.
Not at all. It sold poorly, and Atari was left with millions of unsold cartridges. And the legend, which turned out to be true, was that they literally buried huge quantities of these cartridges in a landfill in Alamogordo, New Mexico.
They buried the evidence.
Essentially. That act of burying them became this potent symbol of colossal failure. Years later, in 2014, a documentary crew actually excavated the site and found the cartridges, confirming the urban legend. The site itself became a weird pop culture landmark. E.T. for Atari wasn't just a bad game. It was a historically significant bad game, a monument to corporate hubris and rushed development.
Okay, those examples really show the range: movies, fanfic, games. But you mentioned earlier this isn't just a Western thing. How does this love for the bad manifest in other cultures? It must look different depending on context.
It absolutely does, and that's what makes it even more fascinating. It's not a monolithic phenomenon. In Japan, for instance, you have certain B movies, especially from the 60s and 70s, that might have been seen as just low budget or weird at the time, but have since become revered as surreal cult masterpieces. A great example is Hausu, or House, from 1977. It's ostensibly a horror film about schoolgirls visiting a haunted house, but its logic is completely dreamlike. The special effects are intentionally cartoonish and bizarre, like a floating head biting someone's behind or piano eating a girl.
That sounds unique.
It's utterly unique. It breaks all conventional rules of filmmaking. And while it might be seen as bad by some standards, it's celebrated in cult circles, precisely for its wild creativity, its visual inventiveness, and its refusal to make logical sense. It's seen less as a failure and more as intentionally avant-garde or delightfully strange.
So reinterpret it as art rather than just bad. What about somewhere like India?
In India, particularly with older Bollywood films, you definitely see ironic appreciation. These films often feature highly stylized action sequences that defy physics, incredibly heightened melodrama, or musical numbers that come out of nowhere. While enjoyed sincerely by many, they also develop these ironic fan bases, especially among the diaspora non-resident Indians or people of Indian heritage living abroad. They might watch these films partly for nostalgia or cultural connection, but also find affection and humor in the exaggeration, the sometimes shaky production values, or the overly dramatic plot twists.
So it's a mix of nostalgia and amusement.
Yeah, it often becomes a shared point of reference, a source of inside jokes. People bond over quoting the most over-the-top dialogue or rewatching the most ridiculous fight scenes. It's a way to connect with cultural heritage, sometimes through affectionate mockery of its excesses.
And elsewhere, like Africa or Latin America?
Well, you see different dynamics again. In regions like Latin America, or especially in places like Uganda, with the Wakaliwood film industry, you have these ultra-low-budget genre films. Wakaliwood Ramon Film Productions in Kampala make these incredible action movies on budgets that are sometimes literally just a couple $100s.
How is that even possible?
Pure ingenuity. They use scrap metal, homemade props, very basic cameras, and incredibly enthusiastic local actors. The special effects are often done with things like condoms filled with fake blood or CGI added later that looks very rudimentary. Now, by conventional Hollywood standards, these films are technically flawed, but they're celebrated both locally and internationally in cult film circuits, not really for being bad in an ironic way, but for their sheer energy, their passion, their incredible creativity despite the severe limitations. They're telling local stories with a unique, hyperlocal, often comedic action style.
So it's more about celebrating the spirit.
Exactly. It shows that the reaction isn't always mockery. Sometimes it's admiration for ingenuity, sometimes it's reinterpreting flaws as style, sometimes it's affectionate nostalgia. It really depends on the cultural context, local humor, and audience expectations. It's not a simple good-bad thing. It's about how different cultures find value and entertainment in different forms of imperfection.
That really broadens the perspective. It's not just one phenomenon, but many related ones. Okay, this brings us nicely to really trying to evaluate this whole thing critically. What are the upsides, the downsides, the real effects of this cultural obsession? Here's where it gets really interesting.
Absolutely. Let's try and break down the strengths, weaknesses, benefits, and maybe even the potential dangers. So starting with the strengths. A big one we've touched on is community. Obsessing over bad media, laughing together at it, creates this genuine shared joy. It can bond diverse groups of people who might not otherwise connect, all united by their amusement at, say, terrible dialogue or a nonsensical plot.
The shared joke effect.
Precisely. Another strength is that it kind of demystifies art. It shows us that media doesn't have to be polished and perfect to be impactful or to spark conversation. It makes the whole process of creating art seem less intimidating. Remind us that even professionals, even people with big budgets, can make mistakes or produce something flawed. It makes art feel more accessible.
Lowers the barrier to entry, maybe.
In a way, yeah. And thirdly, bad media often serves as this fantastic platform for commentary. Because it fails in obvious ways, it provides a really clear lens for cultural critique. We can analyze why it failed, what tropes it misused, what societal values it reflects badly. It becomes a common ground for discussing media literacy and cultural trends, often through humor.
Okay, those are solid upsides. What about the weaknesses? Where does this go wrong?
Well, a major concern is that it can easily tip over into just being mean-spirited. We talked about the FX mocking can cross a line, becoming elitist or cruel, especially when aimed at sincere creators who lacked resources or experience. There's a difference between laughing with the absurdity and just punching down.
Yeah, the line can be blurry.
Very blurry. Another potential weakness is the risk of fostering what you might call content nihilism. If audiences get too accustomed to ironically consuming everything, constantly looking for flaws, does it lead to a cynical view where genuine quality, nuance, or artistic integrity stop being valued? If everything is just fodder for memes, does anything truly resonate on its own terms anymore?
That's a worrying thought, that we stop appreciating the good stuff because we're too busy laughing at the bad.
It's potential downside, yeah.
So despite those risks, what are the concrete benefits for us, for you listening, for the culture as a whole? Beyond just having a laugh, does this seemingly frivolous pastime actually make us better at anything?
I think it genuinely does in a couple of key ways. One of the biggest, perhaps surprising benefits is improved media literacy.
How so?
Well, when you're actively picking apart why something is bad, you're noticing the plot holes, questioning the weird character choices, cringing at the illogical dialogue, scrutinizing the dodgy special effects you are, even subconsciously, analyzing all the core components of media. Story structure, pacing, cinematography, acting, writing.
You learn the rules by seeing them broken so badly.
Exactly. It turns you from a passive viewer into a more critical thinker. You develop a better understanding of how media is constructed, even if you're learning it by looking at spectacular failures. It's like an accidental masterclass in what not to do, which sharpens your ability to appreciate what is done well.
That's a great point. Any other benefits?
Yes, I think it often sparks creativity.
Yeah?
Think about how many creators, filmmakers, writers, comedians, YouTubers got their start by parodying or deconstructing existing media. Bad examples are often fantastic learning tools. They show you pitfalls to avoid, or they provide raw material for satire and homage. Deconstructing bad media can be a really effective way to understand good media, and it can inspire people to try making something themselves, perhaps reacting against the flaws they've identified.
So analyzing the bad can lead to creating something good. Interesting. But we also need to talk about the flip side, the potential dangers. What are the real risks here?
Right, beyond just being mean or cynical, there are a few potential dangers to be mindful of. One is that an overly harsh or mockery-focused culture might unintentionally discourage genuine artistic attempts. If creators, especially those from marginalized backgrounds or those working outside the mainstream, feel like any perceived flaw will be viciously ridiculed online, they might become too afraid to take risks. They might self-censor or stick to safe formulas or just not share their work at all. It could stifle innovation and diverse voices if the fear of becoming the next ironic meme is too strong.
That would be a real loss.
It would. Another danger is that it could normalize certain negative behaviors, like hate watching, where people consume content specifically to fuel their disdain and public mockery, rather than for any kind of genuine engagement or even ironic fun. It can foster a generally more negative, less constructive online environment. And perhaps more subtly, there's a risk, especially with irony being so slippery, that problematic messages or even misinformation could be inadvertently spread or normalized under the guise of ironic enjoyment. If you're ironically quoting something awful, is everyone in on the joke? Does the irony always translate? Sometimes the line between mocking a bad idea and amplifying it can become dangerously blurred, especially when dealing with sensitive social or political issues embedded in the bad content.
Wow, okay, so the irony defense isn't always foolproof.
Not always. It really raises an important question for you, the listener, to reflect on. How do you personally engage with media, both good and bad? What's the tone of your engagement? And what impact does that engagement, multiplied by millions, have on your own critical thinking and on the broader cultural conversation? It's a reminder that even our entertainment choices, even our laughter, have ripples.
That's a really powerful question for all of us to sit with. Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, it feels clear that our cultural fascination with bad media, this whole phenomenon, it's really not just about laughing at mistakes. It seems to tap into something much deeper, doesn't it? A human craving for connection, maybe? For humor as a coping mechanism, and maybe even for a weird kind of authenticity that shines through when the polish wears off.
I think that's exactly right.
Bad media, in its glorious imperfection, it sort of shatters that illusion of effortless perfection that so much mainstream entertainment tries to project. It feels more human, maybe, flawed. And that invites us not just to watch, but to react, to laugh, to question, and most importantly, to share those moments of delightful chaos with other people. In doing that, we stop being just passive viewers. We become active critics, comedians, collaborators, comrades, all united by our shared amusement at a wobbly set or a terrible line reading. So the real story here, maybe it isn't actually about the content itself, the bad movie, the weird show. Maybe it's really about us. About what we choose to elevate through mockery, what we paradoxically cherish, what we collectively decide to make viral, and what all of that says about the culture we're constantly building, meme by meme, shared laugh by shared laugh. So as you go about your day, maybe you mull this over. With AI getting better and better at generating content, are we heading towards a new golden age of bad media? Stuff that's maybe perfectly algorithmically designed to be flawed in just the right way. Will AI failure be as funny as human failure?
That's a chilling thought almost.
Right. And how will people generations from now look back at our current obsessions? Our ironic love for things like Morbius or The Room? Will they do their own deep dive into our bizarre viewing habits and wonder what on earth we were thinking? Think about it and keep diving deep into the things that truly fascinate you.
And remember, there's often a universe of insights hidden in plain sight. You can learn just as much, sometimes more, from analyzing failure as you can from studying success. There's always more to question, more to understand, even in the content we absolutely love to hate.